So enjoyable, very relaxed. I made a super cute knit dress. It's a fit and flare. It doesn't have many steps. It's very easy to sew, but the fitting features are amazing. There's no bodice seam, so it makes it really comfortable to wear because there's nothing rubbing there against your midsection. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. In the last couple of days, I've been sewing a lot and most of the projects have been quite involved. The last video you saw was about the downtown jacket from Pattern Emporium that took a few days to complete both of the versions and the sewing, the editing, all in detail for Patreon. I'm also doing behind the scenes pattern tests that you'll see later on. So I have felt quite pressured for time and everything like that. All very enjoyable, all things I really wanted to sew. They're not the types of projects where you can sort of switch off a little bit and just relax. And I like getting projects in that are easy in between these makes that are a little bit more time consuming so that I can just have fun, relax and enjoy the sewing. And I really did that with this dress I'm going to share with you. It's called Spellbound from Pattern Emporium. And it's one I've been eyeing for such a long time. I really wanted to test the fit of this dress because the tester photos look amazing. The liner looks really simple. This is a pattern from Pattern Emporium that is half off for today. Now remember, this is in Australian timing. This is in Australia, this pattern sale starts on Fridays at 6 a.m. But because we're sort of behind a lot, in my local time, it starts around 5 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. In this area of the world, the sale will end around Friday night, tomorrow. When you click on the link and it takes you to the site, you'll see at the top there's a countdown, so it's easy for you to know when the sale ends. I always put all the links in the comments section, pinned right at the top, so it's easy for you to find. Also in the description box, if you click on my link, it takes you to the website directly, and if you end up purchasing, I do receive a small commission back. That is what being an affiliate means, and it's one of the ways I make an income making all these fun videos here on YouTube. These are type of silhouette that suits a lot of people. It's fitted at the bodice, the upper chest, the neckline, the bust, up to the waist. Even up to the high hip, it's still a little bit fitted, so that's amazing, but then it just whoosh, just flares out like that. Now, most of the dresses I've sewn in this style tend to be more swing style, which means that they sort of hang from the bust down, so there's not much waist shaping. In this case, it's different, and much of that is achieved because there is a center back seam. It's not an optional center back seam. You do need to sew it because it has nice shaping there. This is going to avoid all sorts of issues, and also most importantly, if you have a bit of a curve on the back of you, you're probably not going to have sway back issues, which would be easier to correct if there were, because there is a center back seam there. So I love the center back seam. Whenever I see one, especially a knit fitted dress, I always think it needs to be there, and I wish every fitted knit dress had one. Not all of them do. This one does, and I was really happy about that. You can make the dress short, at the knee, midi or maxi. It's all within one pattern piece, and the longer the dress becomes, the wider piece of fabric you need. So on the pattern, you'll see that there's these little extensions, these little like corners that you can cut out of other pieces of fabric and just have those seams at the bottom, which if you use a print, no one's ever going to know. So I think that's cool. I didn't need to use that on my dress because I just made the knee length version. For the neckline, you can sew a higher scoop, which is not a crew neckline, but it's nice. And then there's a lower one. So 2 neckline depths there. I chose the lower one because I just think that suits me better and I like it and it's more fresh. All the sleeves, all the cut lines are on the same pattern piece. So you can sew a sleeveless where you have a more narrow shoulder area. Then you can have like a regular armhole that would have a flatter sleeve if you want to. It's a small flatter sleeve that you can sew in on a single layer or layer 2 pieces of fabric there, and then it's even more dramatic. And then the third version is a cap sleeve, but it's within the same shoulder, so it's not like you're adding on a sleeve there. I love that, and whenever I've sewn a dress that has that feature, I have always enjoyed it because it's like you get the best of both worlds. It's like you're sewing a sleeveless armhole, but you actually get a bit more cover over here on this area. So that is the option that I've chosen this time. The way that you finish necklines and armholes is with bands, which is super easy to sew. I think at this point you probably have done that before. And remember, I have a full-on masterclass on knit neck bands and bindings that I made for you a couple of years ago that covers all the techniques, percentages, all of those things. In this case, I felt that the length of the neck bands, the pattern piece were just right. I didn't really make them shorter or longer, so that was great. For fabrics, this has to be with a knit fabric. You need the fabric to stretch quite a nice amount. The minimum amount is 50% horizontal. It can stretch up to 100% if you want, but at least 50%. Vertically also you need stretch, 25%. So if you have fabrics around that only stretch in one direction, don't use those. It's not going to fit right. The bodice is going to be short. It's going to be super uncomfortable, so don't use those. Definitely don't even think about using a woven fabric. This is not for a woven fabric. Not if you come asking, what if I put a zipper? It's not going to fit. It's just not going to fit. So if you like fit and flare dresses in woven fabrics, it's just better to look for a pattern that is designed for woven fabrics because the fitting is totally different. Cotton lycra, swim, athletic knits, rayon spandex, bamboo spandex, modal spandex, those work. I'm not a huge fan of rayon spandex. If you watch my content, you'll know why. It's a fabric that usually just fits looser and hangs lower because of all the vertical stretch. So these types of fabrics tend to fit larger than what you think they're going to be like compared to other knit fabrics. So just take that into account. At least for rayon spandex, it's not a fabric that washes and wears well and lasts for a long time. So I say you can use it. I'm just saying I'm not sewing with that fabric anymore because it just doesn't last, and all the work that we put into the project is just not worth it in the end. And after a year, all I have is a beautiful pajama to wear. Double brush poly, stretch velvet, ITY, which is the one that I use. And I've been collecting so many beautiful ITYs I really wanted to use. ITY is a fabric I really like for these types of dresses because it's really light, it's fresh to wear, at least for me, and even though it's not the easiest fabric to work with, let's be honest, I always enjoy the results, the drape, all that. Now, if you want a more dramatic fit and flare where the skirt is just going to come out further and be more dramatic, you could use Ponte Roma if you wanted. But I would look for Ponte Roma that has rayon in the composition, and I would want it to be the softer type of Ponte Roma, not the super stiff type. That's just my opinion. Also, Ponte Roma sometimes is just harder to sew in the bands nicely because it's so thick. So I would put an asterisk on the Ponte Roma on just, it depends. This is a pattern that's a few years old. So the size range isn't like the current patterns. So this one has sizing from 6 to 22 Australian. The highest hip size here is 50.5 inches. Now this has negative ease. That's why you need fabric that stretches at least 50%. I actually measured my pattern pieces to see how much ease we have here or lack thereof. And depending on where your measurements fall within one size, because there's a range of measurements there per size, you could have anywhere from 2 inches of negative ease to 0 ease at the bust. So I'm sitting around the 2 inches of negative ease on my sizing. At the waist, it's going to be fitted. At the hips, because it just flares out, it's going to have about 14, 15, 16 inches of positive ease at the hips. So if you thought you needed to blend out one size extra for your hips, maybe you don't need to. If you needed to blend 2 more sizes, I would blend just so that you get the intended fit. But maybe for one size, you can get away with not blending, just saying. If you know your waist is one size and your hip is the next size. Personal fitting was basically just choosing my size, which is a size 16 Australian at this point, and choosing the length that I wanted. There's really detailed measurements on each of the lengths, the finished lengths. For the knee length version, I had to add 2 more inches of length so that it reaches above the knee. For me, I'm a little bit taller. I'm not extremely tall, just 5'8", but a little bit taller than most patterns are made for. So if I hadn't added those 2 inches, I would have ended up with a dress that was a couple of inches above my knee. That's all I did, so pretty painless. For sewing, I did film a lot of the steps. I'll talk you through that. It's super easy. I did all of the sewing with the serger. Basically, I only did the hem with the sewing machine. I chose a really slippery ITY. Because I chose a fabric that isn't super fun to cut out or to work with, it took a little bit longer, but I'd say this could be a dress that takes you about an hour and a half to sew, including cutting and all of those things. You can see on the table, there's only 2 main pieces here. There's a front that's cut on the fold, and then I sort of flipped it so it fits on the table. There's the back. The back does have the center back seam there. You can see that the shoulders look especially wide here. It's because I'm doing the cap sleeve version that comes a little lower over here. That's intended. And then I'm throwing on the table there my bands. As I was cutting them with my rotary cutter, they were already starting to curl. I knew what was coming. I knew what I was gonna have to do with those bands. You gotta be realistic about expectations, and whenever I use this type of fabric, I know everything's gonna curl and I'm gonna do extra hand basting. I know it, I expect it, so it's not like anything terrible. I just know it's gonna take a tad bit longer. So the first thing I did was sew the center back seam. I pinned the whole thing. I know a lot of people just don't pin and just wing it and do that. I tried not to do that because sometimes you can end up with wonky seams. And sometimes one side can end up being stretched a little at the end when you're trying to forcefully match it up. So I would try to avoid that. And also to avoid taking up pins a lot as I serge, I put the pins a little further away, like 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric. And that helps me. I just sew with the serger, and then I take out all the pins at the end. I think that's a lot more fun. After sewing that center back seam, I put it on my table and I just united it with the front, right sides together, and then I had those short little shoulder seams to sew. They're slightly curved, they're not super straight, and again, it's because it's a cap sleeve and it follows the shape of the shoulder right here. I love that, it's very anatomic. And as soon as I saw that curve on the pattern, I was like, yes, it's gonna fit amazing. And then as usual with this type of construction, you just sew side seams. Again, I pin everything quite a nice amount away from the edge, and I serge, trying to not trim much away at all because the seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch in the pattern. The pattern is designed to be sewn with the serger, so that's okay. Then with the bands, what happens here is that they just curl. There's no way I could do the traditional method where you just pin in 4 areas and then you just stretch as you serge and it's all beautiful. And that usually happens with my beautiful athletic knits. Double brush poly seems to work okay. Cotton spandex works beautiful, but this one is just a curled up mess. I just cannot do it properly like that. So that means I end up dividing in 4 anyway, but then in the middle, I divide by 8 and I end up putting pins all the way around the circumference that I'm using. And then I sort of stretch it manually as I hand sew it on, hand basting it right on the edge to avoid that curling. And once I've got my band all hand basted on and I'm happy I'm not going to get that curling, then I go ahead and serge. So it's just an extra step, but then I'm really happy with how the bands turn out. The neckband, the bands on the cap sleeve, it's the same. So that was all. Serge the bottom, fold up the hem allowance and sew it, and I was done. So let me show you this print. It's like a houndstooth print, but in a larger scale. It's really nice, and it also has a bit of texture. It's like a jacquard type of weave, whilst being an ITY. I'm not sure how to describe the fabric, but there is some texture here. And here is the band, all sewn with the serger. The center back seam is in there. This is the shape that you get on these shoulder seams, and this is the armband right here. It fits really well. There's no gaping anywhere. The band isn't, looking loose or tight. It's just perfect. The length in here is spot on, so I'm very happy with that. And then you can see how up to here you can clearly see the waist shape there, and then it goes poof, it goes out to the side. Very nice. The fit is amazing. As I said, there is shaping in that center back seam, so it's not like it's optional, like you can fold it away. No, don't do that. And you can see that my houndstooth gets a little distorted at the back because of that shaping, but that's okay. The fit is just amazing. Simple hem at the bottom. It's just such a simple dress, and it's so well drafted, so well designed that it's a pleasure to sew. Also very relaxing, nothing stressful over here. And if you think the hand basting stressed me out, it doesn't. As you know, I'm an avid hand baster. It's just part of the way I sew, and it doesn't create stress for me at all. It makes me relax. And in the end, you just end up using your seam ripper very little. So that's what makes me do it. And I know the results are always going to be nice as well. So let's see this one on. I'm going to show it to you just by itself, and then with a few jackets that go with it. I used ITY to make my Spellbound dress from Pattern Emporium. This is a size 16 Australian, straight size, no fitting changes, nothing. And I have the knee length here, lengthened by 2 inches, just so it's above my knee, otherwise it would have been too short. There's a shorter version, a midi and a maxi. You can see it comes in at the waist beautifully. I think the fit is amazing. At the back there is a center back seam. I think the fit at the back is outstanding. It follows the shape beautifully. There's no extra fabric there, and then the skirt flares out amazingly. This fabric is so drapey and it's just perfect for this style. I have the lower scoop neckline because that's what I like. It's finished with a neckband. It's close to the body. I can lean over and I'm not showing anything. I have the cap sleeve version, which is just an extension of the shoulder seam, also finished with bands. The bands give super nice coverage under the arms there, so it gives you the illusion like you're wearing a cap sleeve, but it's actually just the same pattern piece. I really like that, and I think this dress is super cute. I love this houndstooth print in a larger scale. White and navy is amazing, and I'll show you next the same dress just with a few jackets that look really cute with it. This is my downtown jacket. I made this one just a few days ago. It's also a pattern from Pattern Emporium. It's a shorter option of the jacket that hits my high hip, so it's really perfect for a fit and flare dress like this one. Navy, 100% linen. Of course, it's gonna go perfectly over this navy and white Spellbound dress. I really love it, and I picked this ITY with the downtown jacket in mind because I made it so recently. I knew that it was gonna go perfect together, and I'm very happy. This is another short little topper that's made out of linen, slightly different with dolman sleeves and a curved hem. It's also a shorter length and a very simple style that goes perfectly over fit and flare dresses like this. Red, navy and white, you know, there's no shock here that it's one of my favorite color combinations. I think it looks really great over the houndstooth print. And another way I can use a light layer when I want to have options. You know, a dress is an outfit in itself, but you can do many different things. And I think my smitten jacket in this military green also looks beautiful with the navy and the white. I think the colors go perfectly together and it's more toned down. I kept the footwear green so it ties in with the jacket, and this jacket is shorter. It's really interesting design, this one with the casing at the bottom with elastic at the hem and the cuff. It's super pretty and it's a shorter length as well, so I'm very, very happy how it looks with the fit and flare style of the Spellbound. So I'm pretty sure I have more toppers I can wear with it, but that's what I came up with now.
I love this cap sleeve so much. It's not a sleeve that you sew on, it's just a wider type of shoulder, but it looks like a cap sleeve because it's a knit and it just feels amazing on. I wish I'd had time to make another one, but I'll probably make another one soon. They're so easy. I know I'm going to be wearing this one a lot.
So don't miss out if you like the style. I really loved it. Recommend. Oh, and before I leave, if you're interested, because I've gotten so many comments and messages, I mentioned last week that we were having a water situation over here where I live. This is a rural area. This is a closed community where there's one water distribution center for the 1,000 houses there are here. I'm not sure how many houses. But the well broke and the pump broke, and they've been trying to fix it all week. I think they've gotten to a point where we're gonna get a little bit of water now, maybe half of what we used to have. So it's been hand washing, showering with buckets, and it's been, it's like going back to the 1800s. So it hasn't been fun, but oh well, that's what we get for living in a far away place like this. Thank you for your well wishes. I think it's getting resolved soon, hopefully. I just can't wait to use the washing machine and have a nice shower. That's all for me. I'll see you again very soon with more sewing content over here at Lifting Pins and Needles. Bye.